Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports Podcast. I'm Blair Kirchhoff. Beat writer Jesse Newell and columnist Sam McDowell are here to break down the Chiefs after their opening game victory over the Baltimore Ravens and look ahead to Sunday's game against the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't know about you guys, but it's kind of good to be on a normal week. There are fewer of these for the Chiefs this year than for just about everybody else in the NFL, with the Chiefs playing on 6 different days of the week. But let's go back to last Thursday. We've had a few extra days to digest the game and that incredible finish. I've spent the extra time thinking about how close the Chiefs came to losing the game. Maybe I'm being too negative. What do you think about that, Sam? I think all Chiefs fans were pretty ebullient after the win and the way it happened. But I don't know. They were a toe length away from being in a position to lose a game that I thought they should have won from, for about 3.5 quarters.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Chiefs played really well. I think something to keep in mind is the Ravens had the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL a year ago, number 3 in yards per play a year ago, and the Chiefs averaged 7.1 yards per play. It would have been second in their resume in 2023. So I thought the Chiefs offense in particular looked really good. The defense, I think we all thought was going to have some early season struggles simply because this group has not played together the entire preseason or training camp. And you also are dealing with guys, trying to plug guys into starting positions that you've usually relied on for maybe key reserve roles. So it didn't surprise me that much that maybe the Chiefs defense in that fourth down or that fourth quarter 2-minute drill situation did give up the long pass to Rashee Bateman, although it was the only long pass they really gave up the entire day to a wide receiver in terms of air yards. But look, I mean, this is a good win. This is a Ravens team that was the number 1 seed in the AFC last year for a reason. I mean, if you have to come down to the wire to beat a Baltimore Ravens team, like it's still a win, and I think it is a good one.
Also has lots of ramifications for the playoffs. The Ravens could be the team that the Chiefs are chasing for the 1 seed, and you have the head-to-head. You basically take a 2-game lead in this particular game, and I hear you, Blair, on that. I mean, I don't think anybody would add confidence in the Chiefs stopping that 2-point conversion, but still it's probably a 50-50 proposition, even if that toe remains in bounds. But the other thing I think we have to mention with this is that the Chiefs saw a Lamar Jackson I don't think any other team in the NFL is going to see. Like, he was just so content to put his head down and run into contact. Like, he can't do that the whole season. This was like a total grunge match game for him. Like, he was putting it on the line because he lost last year's AFC Championship game, and he really carried them throughout the fourth quarter. I mean, anytime anybody was not open, which was probably 3/4 of the plays, he just tucked his head, ran right into some Chiefs defenders. And I saw he missed part of practice earlier this week. It's not a surprise because that dude should be beat up after that first game, and there's no way he can play that way throughout the course of an NFL season and remain upright. So that seemed like sort of a one-off to me with the Ravens offense, which is not much was going right for them in the pass game, as Sam mentioned. And then they were basically getting rescued by a guy who decided he was going to not try to lose this particular game because he was mad he lost last year's game. So all in all, a good win for the Chiefs. And like Sam said, this is one that might be the toughest game the Chiefs play all season. It just happened to be in the first game.
One point to add to what Jesse said, Lamar Jackson ran the ball more times than he did in any game last year. And the Ravens in that AFC Championship game probably walked away with exactly what we were saying was, why did we abandon the game plan that had got us the number 1 seed? Why did we not run the ball? Why did we become pass-heavy dependent against a team that had a really good secondary a year ago and the Chiefs that were not good against the run? And I thought they should leave this game thinking, I mean, I know what Isaiah Likely said as far as, hey, this was the worst game we played, but I don't know what the Ravens could have done differently in this game. Yes, they could have gotten a toe in bounds, but game plan-wise, this was, to Jesse's point, their all-out game plan to beat the Chiefs, and it's a major contender in the AFC. And I also think you look down the line and think there has never been an AFC team that's lost to the Chiefs in the regular season and then beaten them in the playoffs. And I think that's a real thing. I think that these teams go into these games thinking they have to prove that they can beat the Chiefs because it's literally been statistical true that if you can't do it in the regular season, you haven't done it in the playoffs yet.
I think those are really good points. And the other advantage that maybe Baltimore had, they probably had an emotional edge on this. They had this. They were feeling the sting of the loss, right? The Chiefs were the second straight game they played the Chiefs, and they were coming off of a bitter loss. And we talked about that last week on the show, just how crushed Baltimore had to feel losing at home in the biggest game that organizations played since winning the Super Bowl back in 2012, and the first home playoff AFC title game, right, for them in more than 50 years, and they still didn't get it done on the night that the Chiefs hung a banner and celebrated their second straight Super Bowl. So that I think that Baltimore came into that game with the emotional advantage, and the Chiefs were good enough to stand up to that. What I guess the thing that bothered me is you get twice they had 10-point leads, right? 20-10 and 27-17, and couldn't put it away. The first time at 20-10, they had the ball, they had possession on the Baltimore side of the field, and Mahomes and Samaje Perine couldn't hook up for the wheel routes that was wide open that would have produced points. At least the drive would have produced points, and that let Baltimore, gave them a huge moment of relief, and I thought let them back into the game.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to make excuses for the Chiefs, because obviously they don't need us to make excuses for them. But if you want to talk about things that might be better in the future, Mahomes and Perine being on the same page on that route, if you watch it, it seemed like Mahomes wanted or was figuring he was going to run one particular route, and Samaje Perine ran a different angle with it. And that's stuff that should get fixed when your guy is in your practices for more than a week. That's a positive. Sam mentioned the 7.1 yards per play. Oh, by the way, Hollywood Brown was not in this game. You know what I mean? One of the biggest offseason acquisitions that the Chiefs made, how they were going to have him open up the offense, he's not available. And, even kind of some small things, again, just seemed a little fluky. Like, Mahomes made the Mahomes play on that third down to potentially ice the game and throw it over the top, and this defender comes out of nowhere and deflects it. It was a kind of a weird sort of play for the Chiefs to not have that end the game, because so many times Mahomes has had that end the game. So I thought some sort of weird things going on there, but if we're talking about a Mahomes-Perine connection, definitely that's something that could be cleaned up in future weeks.
Well, a lot of good things did come out of that game, including the play of a couple of wide receivers. I wanted to focus on Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. So Rice with, I think, 7 receptions on 9 targets, 103 yards. One route was particularly effective. And Jesse, I believe that was a subject of your film breakdown.
Yeah, we looked at 3 Rashee Rice plays, and the Chiefs just did such a good job of scheming him open with the particular routes they ran. But we talked about this in training camp, Sam. The number 1 receiver the Chiefs had in training camp was Rashee Rice. And, everybody's been holding their breath on this possible suspension. It sure looks at this point like that legal process is not going to play out for a while. But he gets downhill so quickly, and now he's starting to read things the way that Patrick Mahomes does. And I think that Rashee Rice might be the new Travis Kelce in this offense. You're giving him the option routes. You're opening up the middle of the field for Rashee Rice. He's better yards after catch than obviously Travis Kelce now, who's getting up there in age. So this might be kind of a passing of the torch. I think that's what we started to see in week 1, is that the Chiefs are going to scheme some stuff open over the middle of the field. Rice is going to be their preferred option, and that might mean a little bit less from Travis Kelce, which is fine. I mean, Rice has the body, the physicality to be able to take these sorts of hits, and for week 1, he looked like an all-pro. It was pretty impressive out there.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I agree with Jesse. I mean, I do think that the Chiefs made a point. The Chiefs have always worked the middle of the field so effectively, but it was very much a point that they were going to work it to Rashee Rice and over Travis Kelce. And I think beyond just getting open, it's what he can do with the ball after he does catch it. I mean, he led the game in yards after catch over expectation. I think it was 28 or 29 yards beyond the expectation for what a normal wide receiver would get. And as much as we've talked about the Chiefs offense getting more speed this year, Rashee Rice is not the burner in that wide receiver room, but I still think you're seeing the difference between a wide receiver who's fast and a wide receiver who's playing fast. Because this time last year, Rashee Rice did not have the same grasp and understanding of the playbook that he did on opening night this year. And I just wonder on how many of those routes is he deciding on his own, the way he gets off the line of scrimmage, the way he creates the opening, because so many, if you look at his pass chart, I think 5 of his 7 catches wind up not just between the numbers, but between the hashes. I mean, he's directly over the middle, but he's just choosing a different way to get there and to get open. Sometimes he's on a cornerback. For whatever reason, the Ravens thought Roquan Smith guarding him over the middle a couple times would be an effective answer. Obviously, they were wrong on that. But I just think you're seeing a wide receiver who's not thinking, where do I have to be and when? He's thinking, I just want to get open. Here's so I can get open. I've got confidence the quarterback's going to find me and where the space is going to be open, because now I'm familiar not just with what I'm supposed to do, but maybe with the way the play is going to unfold and where some creases are going to be.
A couple of things on that, Sam. When we did the breakdown with Brett Tabo, I encourage people to go check it out. It's a video breakdown we do every single week up on the Kansas City Star website. But for when you talked about Roquan Smith, the linebacker guarding Rashee Rice, Chiefs did something very interesting on that play, that jerk route that you were talking about, Blair, where he faked outside, came back inside. The Chiefs had 2 running backs on the field. It was 21 personnel. I looked it up last year. Guess how many times the Chiefs have run 21 personnel all of 2023? One time all season. So again, the Chiefs coaching staff mixing this up. If you're putting 2, they kind of split both running backs out wide. They demand having cornerbacks out there to sort of cover them in zone coverage. That leaves the middle of the field open for a guy like Rashee Rice. Again, the Chiefs kind of scheming these things up. Something interesting that Brett noted also as well, that one option route that Rashee Rice got downfield on, we talked about the jerk route where he jerked outside, came back inside. The Chiefs ran that thing very similar on the other side, only that option route was for Travis Kelce later in the game. That was where Rashee Rice had his other big catch, where he ran to space. And so, speaking to your point, Sam, last year, a year ago at this time, Rashee Rice just didn't know the playbook, didn't understand the Chiefs' offense, didn't understand kind of what he was supposed to do out there. Now he's making next level reads to say, I'm sensing open space. I'm seeing space here, and I know what my quarterback is going to see as well with this sort of thing. So that looked like sort of an ad-libbed route, kind of like what Travis Kelce does with Patrick Mahomes. And we heard Justin Watson in the preseason say, hey, where Rashee Rice is taking the next step, he's starting to see things like Pat. He's starting to do some of these ad-lib things like Mahomes does with Travis Kelce. And when that gets on the same page, all of a sudden you have this dynamic offense, again, that gets 7.1 yards of play and has a receiver in Rashee Rice who looks like he's always catching the ball and heading upfield and finding that open space. So it's really dangerous. It's really a positive sign for the Chiefs. And again, if Rashee Rice stays on the field and avoids suspension this year, he could be in for a huge year.
And of course, the national talk after the game was the play of Xavier Worthy, who scores an end around touchdown on the first time he touches the ball in the NFL. I was wondering if after it happened, I thought Patrick Mahomes missed a touchdown pass opportunity because Worthy went behind him instead of in front of him, and we've seen that before, taking the short pitch. And then he has the busted coverage, long touchdown reception. I think it went for 35 yards for the Chiefs' final score. But what an impact that he made on this game. 3 touches in the game, the 2 touchdowns, and I believe he had another 12-yard reception. So I don't know how he could have had a better NFL debut. And talked to him after the game. I believe you did, Jesse, right? And what was Worthy's take on his game?
Well, yeah, he went to the podium after the game.
That's right. Podium.
Said all the right things, basically. He always wanted to be a Chief. This is how he envisioned it even before the draft started. And so, yeah, I mean, it's the perfect weapon for the Chiefs. I mean, they needed speed that teams have to respect. And I know Sam's been all over this topic, but another one of those that we broke down on the details with Brett is just that high-low that they do on Roquan Smith. And the reason that Rashee Rice gets open over the middle is because Xavier Worthy immediately gets downfield, and Roquan Smith has to respect that speed. He has to get some depth because he's like, I'm not getting burned by this guy. And because he does that, his hips are in the wrong spot, and Rashee Rice is just running by him on one of those routes right across the middle that Sam was talking about, a very simple route over the ball. You're like, how do you not cover that? Well, you can't cover it because you're a zone defender and you don't want to give up a huge play to the new rookie who's already scored a touchdown. So he seems to be a really good fit. And, we wrote about this last week. Brett Veach, Matt Nagy, Connor Embry, whoever it is to a man, they talk about his interview at the Combine and how intelligent he's been throughout this process. He had that hamstring issue and missed OTAs, missed mandatory minicamp, couldn't practice. And I was like, whoa, this kind of seems like Sky Moore. Is he going to get behind mentally? We don't see that yet. Now, he wasn't playing 100% of the snaps. He wasn't in there for everything. But as far as this Chiefs playbook and how difficult it is to learn and how much he was out there, I think he was out there for around 65% of the snaps. What he does there and understands his position, understands where he's supposed to be, and just gives that vertical threat. man, it really does help out this Chiefs offense and kind of feels like that sort of missing piece they didn't have a season ago.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's interesting about Worthy is, I mean, one of his touchdowns obviously comes on a busted coverage that, I mean, the three of us probably could have scored on that play.
Two of us, not me. Yeah, two.
Another one is the 12-yard out, right? So I think you're looking at and saying, where did he make an impact in the passing game? I mentioned this on our podcast last week. I mean, the Ravens were number one in the league last year against defending the deep pass. They have two terrific safeties that guard against the downfield pass. This week is interesting against the Bengals because the Bengals were not good at this last year. Now, they did bring in Von Bell, the safety that kind of made their defense tick when they gave the Chiefs more problems than they did a year ago. So, we remember, their biggest play last year was against the Bengals on a busted coverage to Rashee Rice of all. It was the only downfield pass he caught all season a year ago. And so I'm really interested to see what Xavier Worthy does against a defense that's been historically over the past year plus more susceptible to this downfield pass. Having said that, Jacoby Brissett didn't even attempt that stuff last week as the Patriots quarterback against the Bengals. I don't know whether that was because they were playing it so safe because their defense was silencing Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense, or whether because the Bengals maybe have made some adjustments to take that away. But even if Xavier Worthy is taking out of the game, Jesse mentioned, I mean, him and Brett did the breakdown on Rashee Rice. You have to think part of the reason that he's open is because the Ravens were respecting Xavier Worthy in a way that, I mean, let's just be honest about it. Marquez Valdez-Scantling did not prompt the same sort of respect a year ago.
The other thing I want to say, Sam, and people talk about it was a busted coverage by the Ravens, and I've heard it described as a layup. Like the Chiefs got a layup touchdown there. How many layups did they have last year? I mean, like you said, one the whole season. I mean, it's sure
nice. Just the Rashee Rice play I was talking about, where it gets down to the 5-yard line, I think it was.
Yeah, it's sure nice for the Chiefs to have a layup and score a touchdown off of it. I mean, that they didn't have the easy last year, the easy button. You know what I mean? And they scored off the easy button. And that's just such a weapon to have. And again, for Xavier Worthy to catch the ball, to track it, to get it, and then obviously for Mahomes to see out of the corner of his eye and hit it. I mean, if the Chiefs add the easy to what was always difficult last year, they can score a lot more points. And again, they can get a lot more yards. And that's what we saw in this first game against the Ravens.
Okay, so all eyes were on Xavier Worthy and other rookies like Kingsley Suamataia. I believe there are no official stats for sacks allowed. I don't think. It's at least like not on NFL.com, that sort of thing. But analytics and other places where you look for stats, he did allow a sack, maybe a pressure or two, but and I did not see his Pro Football Focus grade. Did he grade out okay? I didn't notice that.
So he did not. He was he was lowest on the team on the offensive side, but graded better in pass protection than run blocking, which is what you want if you're the Chiefs. It is interesting, Blair, because you go to all these analysts out there and you sort of heard mixed reviews. You know what I mean? Like I was just watching former Chief Mitchell Schwartz, and he liked some things he did early on, saying that Kingsley, what he struggled with is a little bit of a hip angle and then also leaning forward and getting out a little bit too far out in front of him. Brandon Thorne is one of the most well-respected ones. He did a video and was pretty critical of Kingsley, said he had a tough outing to start with. And so, again, this is all on a curve. You know what I mean? I asked Andy Reid about this on Monday's press conference to see what he thought. And I mean, Andy was sort of honest with us in the way he is to say, I was happy for him in his debut. I thought he held his own, but he's got a lot to work on. And I think that's probably where you're at with Kingsley, is that it could have been better. It could have been worse, but it's also the opener, and you never know what you're going to get. And Patrick Mahomes helps out because there's a lot of times when you can allow pressures and not do your best, and he just gets that ball out right away, and it doesn't matter that much. He is so good at sack avoidance that left tackle might not have to be as good as it is on many other teams. So I think for Kingsley, it's like a work in progress, but they can't be too disappointed with what he did. I mean, it wasn't an 8-sack effort or something like that. He has some stuff to work on, but all in all, I think it's an okay starting point. I think they think he's going to get there with the athletic ability he has.
Just one thing I'd add, Blair, is that I think it's telling that the Chiefs left him alone so frequently, especially on passing downs. That tells you that they think he's ready. And so for all the evaluation that we make out of one game, the Chiefs have certainly had a lot more time to evaluate Kingsley's play and his preparedness to be a one-on-one left tackle. And they determined in the opener against a team that usually disguises things pretty well that they were comfortable leaving him out on an island more often than not.
I thought he looked like he belonged, right? And that's it, even if he didn't grade well, then you know, he didn't cost them the game. That's a position that can be so costly to a team, and it wasn't to the Chiefs. I suspect he's only going to get better, only will improve. Tough first opponent for guy making his NFL debut,
but he's got a lot of them. Sorry to interrupt, Blair, but like this schedule for a left tackle is brutal this year. This Chiefs schedule that they have. I mean, you face both Bosa brothers, obviously one of them twice. TJ Watt's on the schedule. Myles Garrett's on the schedule. Trey Hendrickson's on the schedule this week. I mean, you've got a Khalil Mack. Max Crosby's on the schedule twice. Like, it is a brutal schedule for a rookie left tackle this year.
The other thing I want to mention, maybe a little underratedly, that did not go for the Chiefs is their run game. Xavier Worthy scored on that one play, but if you look at expected points added and kind of what the Chiefs are able to do, well, you're talking about salting a game away. They had games last year where they had a 4-minute offense and they'd go and run for a couple first downs, and that was not the case in this particular game. And so I think for him, understanding who he's supposed to block, how he's supposed to block him, all those sorts of things, again, it's starting from not that high of a bar. Donovan Smith was not a very good run blocker on the left side last year. So Kingsley has the athleticism to do it. I think it's right now probably more a mental part of this sort of thing. Again, I haven't broken down the film, but I would assume that. But the Chiefs did not run the ball. I mean, I thought Isaiah Pacheco ran hard, but the Chiefs did not run well. And if that gets better over time, then we'll even be talking about this offense being better than it was in week one.
All right. So on the defensive side, the conversation was how much would they miss L'Jarius Sneed and Willie Gay Jr. And you both mentioned it earlier in the show, just how good Lamar Jackson was and how determined he seemed to be to put this Ravens team on his shoulders and win this game almost by himself. Jalen Watson to get the start. Joshua Williams played, but Ravens ended up with 450 total yards. They ran 80 plays. That final drive that resulted in the play in the back of the end zone. They held the ball and got they took over at the 13 or somewhere inside the 20 and marched it down the field. I think it was against a tired defense, but overall, I thought there were some nice moments and some good efforts by this Chiefs defense. I'm wondering if we thought that L'Jarius Sneed, who by the way didn't have a great game in his debut for the Tennessee Titans, but had the fantastic AFC title game, how much he was missed, and will the Chiefs be okay without those two guys?
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs were never getting the L'Jarius Sneed of 2023 back, whether they re-signed him or not, because he's not going to repeat the year he had last year, to where he tracks the number one wide receiver and just pretty much eliminates him from the game. Having said that, knowing that he was league leader in penalties last year among defensive players, but I thought the cornerbacks held up better than I anticipated, because Jalen Watson did not have a good preseason, but this was not a cornerback dependent matchup. Lamar Jackson does not throw the ball outside the numbers nearly as frequently as you will see Joe Burrow, for example. We don't know whether T. Higgins is going to play yet. Jamar Chase did not look 100% in the opener, but it's still going to be a tougher matchup for the cornerbacks because of the quarterback that's throwing to them. Where the Ravens seem to be content to expose the Chiefs in coverage was their linebacker coverage. I mean, Nick Bolton had a bad day in coverage, and it wasn't just the Isaiah Likely touchdown. Like, they went after the linebackers, and I was a little bit surprised that in the one linebacker sets, it was exclusively Nick Bolton. It was not Drew Tranquil in those one linebacker sets. And I think the Chiefs have some questions to answer, because there are going to be some teams that are going to attack the middle of the field in the passing game more frequently than the Ravens did, because they do have questions after the departure of Willie Gay is, who is your coverage linebacker? And if you can't get, exposure at, whoever Trent McDuffie is guarding, we did see him shadow the number one wide receiver. And if you don't feel like the Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams combo is a great matchup for you for the offense, I do think teams are going to look over the middle of the field to the linebackers.
I do want to at least mention here, Sam. So to Blair's original point, how did the corners do? I thought great physically. You know what I mean? Like, Jalen Watson in that third preseason game when he finally got out there didn't look good at all. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, what are they going to do? And so when he came out there and he had a pass knock away in man coverage and, made a couple plays for them and had all the tackles, I mean, I think physically that's as much as you could ask for. When you get up in a game like that, a lot of times you're back and playing zone coverage, and rewatching the all-22, there were a couple busts there where I just mentally, I'm not sure that it was a good game for the Chiefs. And one of those plays I do look, the Isaiah Likely touchdown, that's on Bolton. And I mean, Bolton will say that. There was one out of the backfield. The Chiefs had like a 3rd and 12 on defense, and the Ravens threw to a guy in the flat who was wide open, and Bolton was the guy trailing him. But it looked like zone coverage. And if you watch the all-22, Dave Merritt on the sideline goes over, looks at Joshua Williams, like both hands up, like, what are you doing, man? Like, if you go look, it should have been, it seems like from the film, at least from Dave Merritt's reaction, it should have been Joshua Williams coverage in the flat, and he just like bailed and ran backwards. So that one made Bolton look bad. I'm not sure it's Bolton, at least based off of Dave Merritt's reaction. And then there was a deep one late to Rashad Bateman where, again, the same thing. Like, I'm not sure what Brian Cook, why he was not just waiting there ready for the guy on that back half of the field. So mentally, in certain spots, I think the Chiefs were just off in their coverages. But physically, I think that was the bigger deal for the Chiefs because all those 3 corners coming back, Joshua Williams with a hamstring, Jalen Watson off his labrum, and then obviously Najee Johnson, who made a big special teams tackle off his knee injury and then hamstring. All 3 of those guys had question marks about how physically they could go out there. They all look good in that regard. Now some other things to clean up to make sure some of those big plays don't happen.
Yeah, and let's credit Trent McDuffie for the big play he made that, Sam, you wrote about over the weekend. That was a heck of a play by McDuffie, sniffing out the 4th down play at midfield. So I expect McDuffie to make plays like that. That was terrific. Also, with a good game, Leo Chenal played very well as the spy on Lamar Jackson. Yeah, he had big numbers, but I thought it was interesting how Chenal was kind of lined up all over the place. You saw him, almost like one of those jack linebackers. He lined up where he wanted, and was so active. He was exhausted after the game.
And Blair, tell the motivation story that you chatted with him in the locker room after the game. Yeah,
look, that was he was the guy who. In the AFC title game, he was the guy who missed the sack on Lamar Jackson, who threw the touchdown, the 30-yard touchdown pass to, I think it was the game time, wasn't it? Didn't that make it 7-7? It came earlier.
Yeah.
It was their only touchdown.
The Zay Flowers touchdown.
To Zay Flowers, and he had his arms around Lamar Jackson and couldn't bring him down, and that allowed Jackson to complete the pass in the end zone. So yeah, he was interesting that he remembered that and used that as some motivation preparing for the Ravens. So also just a couple notes I scribbled down. I thought Turk Wharton had a good game.
Yes.
Defensive line. I don't know how he graded. I didn't see the grades, but I thought he was noticeably good in this game.
Yeah, I thought Turk Wharton was in the backfield frequently. I mean, he had 4 pressures in the game from an interior line position. Like, that's a good game. Chenal was interesting, Blair, what you mentioned about him moving around, because we've all had questions about their depth at defensive end. The Chiefs had questions about depth at the defensive end because they went and acquired Cam Thomas after the cuts. And, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, I don't think has come along in this second preseason as much as they wanted him to. And so, is Leo Chenal going to be one of the potential depth options at defensive end? Because those passing downs, he gets taken out of the game because he's not a coverage linebacker. So maybe he stays in the game as a potential depth piece at defensive end. Now, this is dependent on, Chris Jones lined up at defensive end a lot, especially that final drive, that 2-minute drill. He was kicking outside on every time. If I was Steve Spagnuolo, I would have said, we need you inside, Chris. Like, Lamar Jackson is winning the game by winning these plays by driving up the middle with his scrambles, not around the edge. And I thought they could have used Chris Jones inside, but I think part of that was who else was going to play on the outside. And I think it could be a potential intriguing option to see if Leo Chenal could be one of those options.
And just a quick note on the special teams, the Chiefs had no interest in the new kickoff rule. They boomed their kickoffs through the end zone, no returns. So Ravens started those possessions at the 30. We'll get into that in a bigger way this week.
I mean, I just want to give them credit. Like, the Chiefs did the analytically savvy thing. I asked Dave Tobe a month ago at training camp, if these numbers don't play out, will you kick it through the end zone? Because that's what Butker can do. And he said, then yes, we've made changes before in these sorts of things. And the NFL came out with the data, like your average starting position when teams kicked it off was like the 28.5-yard line on normal kickoffs. It's not worth 1.5 yards to risk what the Bills had to happen this past week, a team returning it for a touchdown against you. So like Dave Toub has every reason in the world. He's on this committee. He has every reason in the world to just be very bullheaded and just continue to try to make this play work, because it's in his best interest as a special teams coach to have this thing be a play in the NFL. But that's not going to help the Chiefs win football games. So I applaud Dave Toub. I applaud Andy Reid. Whoever the decision was made, they're making the right decision. They're the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to be better than most teams they play against on a week-in, week-out basis. They don't need the craziness of some other team returning a kickoff for a touchdown. So they're making the right call here. They're making the analytically savvy decision, and they're doing it even if there might be other motivations there that would get them to want to potentially try to kick the thing off.
You want to hear a crazy stat?
Always.
The Bengals are 1-4 in season openers last 5 years. Their week 2 record over the same period, 0-5. They haven't won a second game in the last 5 years, which is bizarre.
So is that Joe Burrow's record in his first 2 games then?
I'm trying to think. Was he the guy in 19? Because I think that's when it starts, right? 19, yeah.
He starts in 20. But
So-
yeah, he starts in 2020. He goes 0-2 in his first 2 games. In 2021, he goes 1-2 in the first 2 games. In 2022, he goes 0-2 in his first 2 games. In 2023, a year ago, he goes 0-2. So that puts him at 1-7 over the first 2. Now he lost week 1, so 1-8 over the first 2 weeks of the season for his career. That's a remarkable player.
Yeah, and they end up in the playoffs most of those years. They didn't last year, but they did finish with a winning record with Browning at quarterback. So just bizarre with the Bengals. Chiefs open up as a 6-point favorite in this game. I guess that's about right, given what happened in week 1. That was a terrible loss for the Bengals in the opener.
The bettor's mantra, Sam, is never overreact to week 1. So what would the line have been if you didn't know that the Bengals lost to the Patriots? Probably 3 or 3.5, something like that. So
I do think
interesting line, I think.
I do think the Bengals have questions beyond this first game, which is this Jamar Chase situation where he set out training camp. He didn't look 100%, says he was ill. T. Higgins, we still don't know if he's going to play. That's always been a troublesome matchup for the Chiefs, having 2 wide receivers to defend rather than 1. So the Bengals had a messy training camp. And Joe Burrow is returning from an injury that I think there were questions about his arm strength coming off of that wrist injury. That can linger. So if I was a Bengals fan, I thought there was a little bit of cause for concern going into the season. But I still think the Bengals are an AFC contender, and they're still a team that this is a big game for the Chiefs for that reason, if nothing else.
Well, I think they give the Chiefs fan the willies like no other team, right? Just because of that, what happened in that 17-game stretch over 2021 and 22 when the Bengals beat the Chiefs 3 straight times, right?
They're not a team that's scared to come into Arrowhead. And how many teams can say that? It might just be one that doesn't fear coming into Arrowhead Stadium and playing this game.
Right. Okay, great conversation as always with you guys. That'll do it for this episode. Hey, thanks to Randy Mason for producing, and to our SportsBeat KC staff of Monty Davis, Jeff Rosen, and Scott Chasen. Tip of the cap to Jesse Newell and Sam McDowell for sharing their insights. Thanks for listening. Let us know what you thought by leaving a rating or review or a comment if you watched us on YouTube. We'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in and around Kansas City.